Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Hipfire Podcast. Today, we're going to be giving our seasonal awards for this year. So this includes things like MVP, Team of the Season, Coach of the Year, and we're pretty excited because we have a little bit of a debate over some of the picks. So this should be pretty interesting. So to kick it off, why don't we start with Yas? Who is your MVP pick for this year?
So after much deliberation, my MVP pick is Shotzi of the Dallas Empire. He's been an elite playmaker this entire year, has really been the catalyst for this Dallas Empire team that, is mainly built around fundamentals. They don't really have one guy going off, and if that is the case, it's definitely Shotzi. He's by far the most important player. Typically, if they're not performing, they're not winning. I mean, just given looking at his last events, he had a 1.09 at Toronto, highest on the team. 1.29 at the London event, which they won, highest on the team. 1.01 at, I believe, Paris. He was second or third highest behind Clay and Hugh. 1.23 at the prior event to that one, highest on the team once again. A 1.29 at Minnesota, once again, like a broken record, highest on the team. And a 1.03, I believe, at Dallas, which was, again, highest on the team. He's been the best player throughout, and he does it pretty much all the time as an MP5, with the exception of the past couple tournaments where he's won with the M4. Obviously, everyone remembers his poor starts, which I think only continue to prove how good he is to be have gone from 0.7s, being called botsy, being doubted, and then instantly one of the most dominant players in the game. I mean, you look at his matchups, he dropped 1.22s in grand finals against FaZe, a 1.99 for the loss. He's definitely a player that shows up in these big moments, big tournaments, whether it be grand finals or against top teams like FaZe or Florida. He always shows up, and I think that's one of the biggest things. He finished with around a 1.07 KD, which, again, very impressive considering his early season woes. And the shout out to Carson. He has him on third highest for wins above replacement, meaning that, of all the players in the league, he's one of the most important. If you were to put him on another team, he'd just perform just as well. So Shotzi's my pick for sure.
Yeah, and Shotzi's been a guy that can perform in all the game modes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter which one, he'll still shine. And to show that, we have some Shotzi S&D clips to show. So the first one's against New York, and I'm going to play the whole round out just so you kind of see kind of the scope of the round and how it played out and why the play for Shotzi was kind of crazy.
Towards me, and you can see them start to stack, and 4's got an angle. Number 2 and Crim6 is wrapped all the way around as well. The numbers are here, but as Attach gets in with a snipe, he hasn't seen anything. So they're going to opt to wrap this back. Attach going to hit a shot as well, but Hook's the one in a position to shut this down if they wrap it back.
Mac able to find a timing. I mean, it was a great first blood by Clay, and here comes Hook. Pops the dead silence, is able to win it. I think he's trying to go at Zuma, but Zuma just holds the door. Great play out of him. Now, which bomb site do they want to go after? And Shotzi, he can make the play. That is the bomb carrier. Gonna take his time, plays it patiently. Hello, Temp says hello. He's gonna pop the smoke. Use the dead silence. The finesse challenges Mac, is able to win it. Now it's a 1 versus 1.
Shotzi going for the 1v3. One more fight to win, or well, just to play the clock. Don't allow the plant to get down. Zuma's hunting. Shotzi playing it so well.
It's over.
No time to plant. Just has to play his life. Shotzi makes the play. The trigger discipline on the bomb. Flies through the smoke. Guns a second. And what a clutch it is for Shotzi.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite clips of Shotzi just because I feel like that whole round, New York played it so perfectly until Shotzi just made a hero play and won the round for them. We have another 1v3 from Shotzi against FaZe. I think most of us remember this clip because it's pretty funny.
He can see the bomb from underneath that truck from very, very far away. If anyone goes for it,
they're not on it. He knows that. Where's Crim at? Crim just a little further behind. Crim's got to get taken down, but Shotzi is still behind the truck.
Shotzi.
Oh, look at the time. Look at the time. Look at the time. Shotzi's done it. A 1v3 to keep Dallas in the game. A tap from Shotzi.
And now look.
Yeah, it's a funny clip for Shotzi.
Yeah.
I like that clip too. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just to cut you off there. I think clips like that last one kind of demonstrate what Shotzzy brings to the game besides just his slaying prowess as well, that I forgot to mention. He like studies the game almost to a point where he understands it inside and out. Like, he was one of the first few to understand how to do the slide cancel break, like game breaking mechanic essentially, and he abused it and he did it very well. And we saw clips of his movement and how smooth and fluid it looks on the map, and it allows him to be a good player. And then spots like that in S&D, like that was a big moment, although I believe they ended up going on to lose that map. I mean, it's spots like that that give him an advantage, that he studies the game so religiously that lets him be above these other players in the league.
Yeah, for sure. I think he also leads the team in hardpoint time, in average hardpoint time.
I believe you're right, yeah.
So he definitely does a lot on the map. Yeah. But so that's like Yasser's pick is Shotzzy, which I actually, it's a strong pick. But I actually think Celium, for me, is the MVP. And I took a little bit of a different approach to this because I wanted to pick somebody from one of the top 2 teams or top 3. Somebody who's been consistently performing well throughout the whole year, and that's basically what FaZe is. I mean, FaZe has had some close matches, but they've made it to the semifinals every time, which is pretty remarkable. And they've won a bunch of tournaments, and they've looked good all year. Even when they were, ropey, they still were winning matches. It was just that they were closer in a lot of round 11s. And in those round 11s, it was Celium who would pick them out of the round 11s. He'd play super well on S&D. He had like ridiculous S&D stats all year long. So for him, it's especially in game 5s too. So for when I picked the MVP here on FaZe, it was between Simp and Celium. And I think a lot of people could have had that kind of debate over who, which one's the better on the team. And I think it's hard to say which one's better because they're both so skilled. I just think of which one had more of a winning factor and a winning impact on the team. And because of those S&D clutches, I went with Celium. I think that, it's really crazy to see someone so young, like just winning games and clutching up for his team on a consistent basis all throughout the year. It's nice to see. And I think for a guy like Celium too, he didn't run the same role all year. Like, he was in AR, then he was flex AR, then he was sub, and Simp took over as a flex. And no matter what role he played in, he always just played really well. Even when he was the AR, his stats dipped a little bit when he tried to flex on the AR. But he individually still looked really good, and I think that's why he's my MVP. It's just tough because I'm looking back at Shotzzy now, and it's just a tough comparison to make. But I think they both have the same kind of quality in S&D, like Yas mentioned, like super smart, reads the game, understands it, and kind of finds like tricks and different ways to play. And there's a famous Karma clip in a podcast where he says he kind of mocks Celium a little bit, saying like that he always finds kind of the tricks in the game and glitches to abuse. And there's that one at Piccadilly where he tracks the guy's movement through ticket booth. So it's not like those moments may not be the best for competitive integrity, but it just shows that these guys grind the game and they try to understand the game to the best of their ability. And to show kind of some of the clips of Celium this year, I went for some of the S&D ones because, again, that's why I chose him as the MVP. It's just the S&D clutches and like keeping FaZe consistently in semifinals over and over again. So I attribute that a lot to the Game 5 success. So we got some here.
And with 15 seconds, Slasher has to plant the bomb. Celium in position to make a huge play here for Atlanta FaZe. Bomb planted, Slasher down, 1v1. Celium tagged up, plays his life so very well. DJ had a great 1v1 clutch in this exact scenario earlier on today. Can he produce the goods once again? Celium with 30 seconds left. DJ spots him cross. Now Celium has the information he needs. Time ticking. Players tagged. And Celium gets the pick! Celium! A huge...
And then, of course, there's the tragic one against Seattle.
They got what? Celium versus
18
2.
seconds. 1v2 for Celium. He's clutched so many of these in his career. Can he find another one? With 12 seconds, bomb is being planted. If he can find the pick just in the nick of time, maybe he wins the round and he gets it. 7 seconds, can he travel away? Celium, just barely, by the skin of his teeth, escapes. Is the bomb going to be planted? 1 second! No! Atlanta FaZe! Atlanta FaZe! In a millisecond win the round.
Yeah, two pretty crazy clips in a row there for Celium. And so it's funny when you talk about MVP and you see these two guys here because they're both super young. They both had the expectation of being superstars, and they're already fulfilling it so early in their careers. It's kind of crazy. What do you make of this this race? Yes.
Yeah, no, it's hard to pick, to be honest. Like, I know throughout the beginning of the year, Celium was often considered the MVP. It does make it a bit more difficult because I don't believe there was an MVP named at every event. I feel like there was. That'd be a nice thing to see, to compare between the two. Again, yeah, it's very difficult to sell it. They both have made incredible SD plays, as you've mentioned. They both incredibly smart. Both students of the game in every sense of the word. So, to be honest, whoever is named MVP at the end of the season will be very deserving, whether it is Shotzi and Celium. But just for me personally, given the team that's around both of them, I'd have to give the edge to Shotzi.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, because we've seen insane stuff from, Abizi and Simp as well, and it's weird to say that it takes away from Celium because it shouldn't really, but it kind of does.
Yep.
in this conversation, right? Because I think in terms of raw skill wise, at the beginning of the year, everyone knew it was Atlanta FaZe, and people's worry for FaZe was that they have all this talent. Are they going to play well together? They don't have the veteran, all that kind of stuff. But it seems to be a team effort from all those guys. And whereas on the Dallas side, their success lately has just come from. I give credit to Hook as well, but it's mostly been Shotzi just go and win us games and make plays. And I think they try to make Shotzi. Yeah, right. Like I feel like early in the year when Alien and Shotzi were struggling, I feel like Clay was doing so well and Hook was looking really good. I almost feel like Clay took a step back and said, all right, what do we need to do to make you two guys comfortable? Because we know that if you want to have success in the long run, it's going to be on the backs of the young guys, not on the backs of us. So, what can we do to really get you guys playing at your highest ability? And they figured it out, and it's been working. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, but shall we go to the next award?
Yes, the next award we have is the Most Improved Player Award. So this one is we tried to do for this year specifically. So we instead of doing it from Most Improved from last year, we're doing it Most Improved from the beginning of the title. So Yas, why don't you go into your pick?
Yeah, so my pick on the right is good old Cammy Cod from the Toronto Ultra, incredible player. So yeah, as Seth mentioned, we tried to look at players within the season as opposed to last season, given that that's what we wanted to determine it by. And I found that Cammy's progress throughout the tournament and throughout the tournaments rather is quite interesting to look at. You look at the best. You look at his event from the beginning or launch weekend. He had a 0.94. Then he progressed to 0.10.02, then a 0.93, a 0.96, a 0.99, a 0.89. And so through his first 7 events, he was around roughly a 0.95 to a high 0.9, maybe a 1. Well, he had only one event above a 1.0. And he predominantly played with the SMG, the MP5. And to his credit, in fairness to him, rather, the team often made roster changes throughout. We saw guys like Classic come in, Classic come out, Looney come in and out, Metals was in and out of the lineup, Vance came in after the first event. So I can only imagine how difficult for him to find some sort of consistency, although it looks like he did find that, but just not above a 1.0. It wasn't positive. Then you look at the last 3 events, which in particular were the most important events for the Toronto Ultra, given that I believe at this point, or up until or at the last event where he had a 0.89, they were 12th place. The last 3 events they needed to, one of them they needed to win, and the others they needed to at least make semifinals to be able to get to that top 8 bracket. And he delivered. He had a 1.0, a 1.05, and then a 1.13 at the Toronto event, and they ended up winning. And seeing that progress where he was barely low/mid 0.9s, and then the last couple events he's like a 1.0, 1.05, and then a 1.13. That progress is so incredible to me because he was so dynamic in so many cases. I mean, we remember on the map at Piccadilly, he had 70 kills with the sniper. And I think his sniper play, he's been underrated as a sniper. People talk about Simp and Dashy and Wuskins. No one's talking about Cammy. Cammy is elite with the sniper. He's opened up so many plays, got so many first bloods, and shut down so many sites for the Ultra, and that's why they've had so much success in S&D. So good on Cammy to show that improvement, not only in Respawn, but in S&D, and he's my pick for most improved player for sure.
Yeah, I remember when the roster was getting formed, the Toronto roster was getting formed. You're a pretty big Toronto fan.
Yep.
You had a lot of concerns, and because you weren't sure what the starting lineup would look like. And when Cammy got announced on the starting lineup, even me personally, I was a little confused. I mean, he showed some great stuff in Black Ops 4, but he didn't have the same name as some of the other guys and the same, past experiences.
Reputation, yeah.
Yeah, reputation. Yeah. So it's nice to see him, live up to the name and play so well this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good pick for sure. So I went with Lamar, which I'm probably going to get some flame for because he's not the most liked guy in the community for whatever reason it is. But I went for him because, at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of discussion about top ARs between guys like Denz and guys like Assault and, Octane. And Lamar was not even close in that conversation, and he was actually towards the bottom. So people were thinking like some of the worst ARs. Some people were saying Lamar, and it's because his stats weren't there. And in this game, AR stats have been like heavily favored. So to see an AR not like have the best stats on his team, it was kind of weird. And it wasn't like Lamar was playing terribly. He's still around a 1.0, but he was either a little bit above 1.0 or below it for most of the season, leading up to the last few events. And even I say he's most improved, and not really from a stat-wise perspective, because even stat-wise, I mean, they increased, but not by a ton. He eventually did get to a steady, consistent above a 1.0. But I think for me, I would give him most improved because of their S&D success and the way they got better at Respawn. Because I think while part of it's definitely due to Revan, who we'll get into later in terms of coaching, but another part of it is Lamar's kind of calmness and his presence in the comms. Because when we heard listen-ins for New York, a lot of times it was just Temp hyping up Mac. And then the rest of the comm was basically Lamar telling people where to go and being really calm and kind of directing the team and being a really good leader. And I think that's something that's super hard for people to see in stats, but very apparent when you hear comms. I think Crib and Clay is a good example of that as well. Those guys in comms lead the Empire, but in the stats they don't, and then people don't really see the importance in that. So what I see most improved for Lamar, it's one, his stats did get better, and he did look individually a lot better, started clutching more in S&D, getting back to that World War II form. And then two, it's the way the team overall improved as well. And I give that on the backs of his leadership, partly from his leadership. So I think for the guy like Lamar, he doesn't seem too personally concerned about stats and is more concerned about winning, which I think is it's a great thing. And he definitely doesn't try to set up kills and kill whore, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that the community can get a little bit too hard on him sometimes and expect a ton from him. I just expect the team that he's on to be winning more than they were, and then when they started winning, I attributed it to accuracy's better play. What do you make of Lamar's year this year?
Yeah, I think similarly at the beginning of the season, we saw him sort of falter alongside Zero. And it always felt confusing to me that they both had them sort of in similar roles. Obviously, Zero played the main AR last year, so it looked like they both struggled. And I personally thought that Lamar should have been dropped. Obviously, I was wrong given their progress throughout the season. And I think for Lamar, he's always been the kind of guy or kind of AR that's really slow, likes to hold on certain points of the map, like a head glitch that gives his team advantage, and that's where he seems to succeed. And I think once New York figured out the rules, it allowed Lamar to have more of a presence on the map, and that's what we saw throughout the year. His KD improved. He was able to be more effective, not only in Respawn, but also we saw him making some great plays in S&D. I begrudgingly remember him getting clutches on the Toronto Ultra on Arcloth Peak.
Yep.
And he has his own spot on Arcloth Peak by those fences outside B. We call it the accuracy spot now because of how often he used to go there. So I think it just shows the progress he made throughout the season, and he's definitely a good pick for most improved player.
Yeah, but I think together we kind of agree that it's Cammy.
Yeah.
I think Yas highlighted a ton of good points about Cammy, and it's nice to see guys like this get a chance to show it, because this is one thing about the format that I actually do like, is that every team gets highlighted on the alpha stream, on the main stream. You see every match, and I think when you over time, when you watch every match and when you watch every game, and you see them play against the top competition, you start seeing certain players improve. I don't know if that makes sense. If what I'm trying to say makes sense, I feel like this year it was easier to see individual players either do well or not do so well. Some guys in Seattle. But what I'm saying, the point is just like it was nice to be able to consistently see improvement out of Toronto, and a lot of it coming from Cammy.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So that'll can send us to the Coach of the Year discussion, and this one's kind of interesting. So I know Yas, you won it with Revan, so why don't you discuss why you went with Revan?
Just prior to that, I mean, talking about Coach of the Year, I think management should also play a part. That's where I kind of figure with New York. But it's a bit difficult, I think, for both of us, just given that since coaches are so new, or not necessarily new, but their role hasn't really been important until recently. Again, like we saw Black Ops 4, coaches start to come back into the scene, and especially this year, we've seen coaches get more hands-on with the team. Obviously, not every coach is so invested in terms of the strats, S&D. Some are just there to sort of make sure everyone knows the fundamentals. Others have a more hands-on role. So it's really difficult to determine what coach to select. So for me, it came down to what team improved fundamentally over the year that was a big importance. And for me, that was New York. We saw them. Revan played a big part in helping them get out of the basement of the league. Obviously, they believe they won one out of their first 7 matches, which is just, Jesus Christ, that's horrible. But he did a good job. Once he brought Mac into the fold, they looked like a complete new team. He had them playing fundamentally better. With guys like Mac able to be so aggressive, it allowed to take pressure off of guys like Zuma and Attach. Their S&D pool, which is something that I credit Revan for, widened. We saw, especially at the event they won, they were very strong in St. Petrograd and Ramaza already, and they decided to work in Arklov Peak into that rotation, and that proved to be very, very important for them leading into the matches they ended up winning. And it's stuff like building up their map pool, getting more consistent. One of the biggest, best hardpoint teams, arguably, in the game throughout the second half of the CDL. That's stuff that I attribute to Revan, considering that they were playing so much better fundamentally, and their S&D strats got a lot better. And a guy like Revan, who's known to be fundamentally strong, he as an analyst, at least when he was with the CDL, I attribute that to him, and that's why he was my Coach of the Year.
Yeah, that was a good pick for sure, especially the way, like you said, New York's S&D improved. You got to think Revan had some role in that, right? But yeah, so for me, I was actually deciding between Rambo and Crowder for a bit, and then I thought, FaZe, talked about it a lot over the all year basically. They've consistently had fundamental issues in respawn, so I feel like I can't give it to Crowder because they didn't really seem to improve that. They showed it sometimes. They showed they can rotate, but it wasn't on a consistent basis. And even in S&D, it's a lot of it is mid-round adjustments, which I don't know how much impact that really comes from Crowder. So instead, I decided on Rambo Ray. I think he definitely has some kind of input. I don't know if it's strategic or what, but I imagine he definitely helps the guys out, and he's been obviously one of the smarter COD players and minds in the history, and the team's having success and playing well. So I got to think that Rambo has some kind of role in it. I think the casters talk about it too. They always say they give credit to playing Crim a lot for leading the team, and they always say, but they also have Rambo Ray at the back of the helm, which has got to help. And when you're bringing in a team that New York has, I think you have to have a good level-headed coach, because I imagine Crim and Clay argue all the time. It's going to happen, and then I also imagine guys like Hoog and Shotzi get really quiet and might have trouble, communicating with the rest of the team. But bringing a guy like Rambo in to make sure everyone gets their input and to make sure Clay and Crim don't kill each other, I feel like that was a really good move for New York. So he's my pick. And the reason why Atura's there is also because I feel like he should be at least mentioned, like an honorable mention, because of the way that Florida improved and seemed to read the game before anyone else did. Again, like it's hard for us to know how much the coaches really like help and affect things, but just from the way that Florida early on picked up the 2AR meta, especially on Ramaza, Hardpoint, and they seem to just understand rotations and always be holding the right angles and rotating well, and it just seemed like they were so well, like better polished. I think it was the month of, was it March or May, where they just had an incredibly good month, and I attribute a lot of that to Atura. I think he's got to have some kind of role there because, you know, it's crazy to see how much success they had and how much better they got. And it's the same kind of story with New York, with New York, like Yas was saying with Revan, where they brought somebody in to help improve the team. But even when you do that, you bring somebody in, it's nice to have a coach to be able to like iron out strats for the new guy and to make the new guy feel comfortable in the team. So I think these are pretty good picks. But what do you think, Yas, for like the overall coach of the year?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you that Rambo can definitely take that role. I think we've seen him, especially on streams or even on the Dallas channel or Twitter. I've seen clips of him breaking down gameplay, and it shows that he still understands the game at such a high level, and it's why he's regarded as one of the smartest players to ever play Call of Duty. And one thing that I've noticed with Dallas, obviously one of the best fundamental teams, and obviously you got to credit guys like Clayster and Crimsix for that, veterans who understand the games very well, understand how to play these game modes at a high level. I think Rambo definitely deserves credit. And one thing to talk about, their map vetoes. If Rambo plays a factor, give him all the credit in the world. Because one thing I noticed is that in most matchups, Dallas was set up pretty well with regards to their map vetoes. Almost either they were playing maps they were strong on, or they were anti-stratting and making sure they were playing maps that they were like other teams were strong on. With the exception of Zero Cave, I don't understand why Krim plays that map, but other than that, they always look to be the stronger team with regards to map vetoes, and I think that's something that you got to credit Rambo with. But other than that, yeah, I think we did a good job of summing it up.
Yeah, for sure. Good job, Rambo, and I hope to see some more of his Warzone clips in the future. But that'll take us to the best acquisition. Unfortunately, Mac's picture is black screen behind it, and I cannot be bothered to trace it. So this is what we have for best acquisition. I'm gonna kick it off with talking about the Florida guys, and then also get into Mac. So the Florida guys, it was hard to pick between one of them because both their impacts seem to be really huge. Personally, I think Awakening might be like a just insane. I was gonna say once in a lifetime, but it's not really because Sif did it last year. But kind of like an insane talent that came out of nowhere, and I feel like he could be good on any team. He can slot in anywhere and play super well with any gun. He just seems to be super gun skilled. Whereas Pharaoh, I feel like he actually fit the specific team really well. I feel like this Florida team has a lot of defined roles with Sky's main AR. You know, Havoc's the wacky sub. And then everybody else, like Frosty, Pharaoh, and Awakening, they kind of have just like the, you know, whatever gun you're comfortable with on a certain map, run it. I've seen them both running, all three of them running M4s. I've seen all three running SMGs. And no matter what the role they're playing, they all seem to be playing pretty well. So I think for Pharaoh, he found a good home here. And it's on a team that has a lot of cool heads. You know, they don't have a lot of, you know, crims and slashers. And I think Pharaoh kind of needed that. He needed a place to thrive where he's not going to be in screaming arguments. I don't remember if you guys recall the arguments he used to get into with Parasite at the start of World War II, but they were bad. Like, they're really bad. And it rubbed off like Pharaoh had a bad attitude, which I don't know if he does or not, but I definitely know that he can get confrontational. But on a team like Florida, where they all just are kind of more relaxed and want to win, it seems like it didn't have much of an impact. So between them, I'd probably side on Awakening as the best acquisition because I think he's just been ridiculously skilled in all game modes. And I mean, it's close though. Pharaoh's the same thing. All game modes just looks really good. And they both improved the team. So I think, you know, between those two guys, Florida did a great job. So shout out to the Florida management for scouting out those players and you know, making it work. Mm-hmm. I think that they probably had the most success in terms of trades in total because they made two of them. They both worked out. But I actually like Yas's pick. So Yas, why don't you get into why you picked Mac?
Yeah, so I picked Mac. obviously, Fair and Awakening, great picks. The only knock on them that I would say is that Florida, prior to picking up both those players, they were a team that were capable of making finals. We saw it with guys like Preston and Mock.
That's true.
So
That's true.
that's the only knock that I have on them. They're both incredible players, obviously, improved the team. But for me, the best acquisition was New York picking up Mac. I kind of talked about it earlier when we talked about Revan. They were 1-7 in their first, Sorry, let me rephrase that. They won only one match throughout their first 7 matches. Only one.
Oof.
They were one of the worst teams. Everyone was talking about, Friendship League, Friendship Team. This is the team. They're playing on Friendship. They're not winning. We saw them subbing Happy in, which that was a disaster. And what else could you expect for Happy? I mean, there's only so much he can do. He's not played at that role for such a long time. So them going after a guy like Mac was extremely important. I think was a great pick. They ended up winning their next 12 out of 23 matches to place 5th in the league, which, I mean, was extremely important for themselves, but as well very impressive. Mac boasted an overall KD of 1.13, highest on the team with an SMG. I'm pretty sure he played maybe a little bit of M4 towards the end with the meta.
He did. Yeah, he did.
But, I mean, almost all the time it was him jumping in first with the MP5, putting the pressure on other teams. And because he was so aggressive, that allowed for everyone else on the team, whether it be guys like Zuma, who definitely played better. Attach, who looked consistent throughout, but Attach also had a little less pressure on him. Accuracy was able to set up with the main AR, and Temp looked a lot better, being able to be that flex position at times. So Mac essentially helped their entire team structure by providing the one thing that they needed the most, which was a very aggressive SMG. It's one of the hardest roles to run in Call of Duty, and he did it to a T. Arguably one of the top 5 SMG players at the end of the season, I'd argue. I mean, he had the highest S&D KD as well with a 1.08. He was dynamic throughout. Definitely one of the best acquisitions in my opinion, and he's one of the reasons why New York has a fighting chance at Champs. So it had to be him in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually agree with Yas on this one. I think that the turnaround is what I agree with. The 1-7 to the 1 out of 7 to the 5th place in the league. That's incredible, and it's a lot on Mac's shoulders. So good job for New York picking up Mac. I think it's interesting because that was the first. I'm trying to think, did Vivid and Spartan come before Mac? Or was Mac
I think it might have been around the same time because Mac started scrimming around March 16th. That's the CDL Intel tweet that I remember that they tweeted about. So this was just right around the time that they moved to online. I believe Vivid and Spart, if I'm not mistaken, did play a match on LAN.
They did.
So
they did.
Mac did come after. I remember that I think even LAG was looking into taking Mac, but they didn't. New York's.
Yeah, they were also Awakening as well.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
A lot of these players, teams didn't want to bite the bullet and pick them up, and they are worse off for it. So good job to New York and Florida.
Oh, definitely, for sure. Yep. And even Vivid. Vivid's been great. Like, he's been a great acquisition. I know the team hasn't done well, but he looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
And other acquisitions definitely were interesting, like the Pristini and, Zero going over to London. And they definitely seem to improve teams. So it's hard to say that any acquisitions were bad. I don't think Spart was ready to play the Pro League. So I think maybe that's, quote unquote bad acquisition. But for the most part, it seems like the teams that did made changes for the better and trying to make changes that improve their team, which is nice to see. And but good on New York. I do agree. I think Mac was the standout in terms of a single player coming in and totally revamping a team. And that'll take us to the Rookie of the Year discussion, which is, Mac, you played great, but I think it's got to be between these two guys. Mm-hmm. They both won on a more consistent level, looked good on a more consistent level, and just, one of them's that MVP discussion, and the other one just is a freak to the point where people think he's cheating. Actually, to be fair, people thought both these guys were cheating. Yep. In various ways. So I think that's good praise. And it sucks though because I don't know if you guys are too tuned into the CSGO scene, but there was a player called Ross in CSGO, and he was accused of cheating when he was coming up in online in CSGO, and he is now one of the better riflers in in all CS:GO, and actually he's not playing super well right now, but he was regarded as one of the better, up and coming stars, and people finally give him credit when he played a while on LAN. But they asked Rops, what was it like? Was it a sense of pride, and was it a compliment when people said you were cheating? And Rob said no. He said it was awful. He said it was horrible to when like the guys you looked up to and the pros that you want to play with, when they're just calling you a cheater, discrediting you. He said it was an awful feeling, and that's kind of what makes me mad when I look at these two players, because they're both pretty humble. They're not super cocky. They just go out and try to win, try to grind the game as much as possible, and they both have incredible shots. And I think when you call them cheating and you discredit them, it sucks. And hopefully these guys don't take it too much to heart. I don't think they do. I think actually they both kind of showed a little bit of, I don't know, I don't want to say stats, but a bit of stats when they, Shotzzy proved that he wasn't cheating with the movement right away. When getting held up his controller to the camera to prove that he wasn't cheating with a special controller. And I think even Krim, he was trolling, but he also said, like, if you think Awakening's cheating, you're just dumb. So it's nice to see that they're finally getting recognition now. I just wish it was from the fans as well. But I think just because of the fact that these two young guys took this league by storm and were called cheaters, I want to give them credit, and I think they deserve it. So I'm going to put them up for Rookie of the Year. But between the two, Yas, who do you think is the better Rookie of the Year?
I'm gonna say Shotzzy, just given I've already made points about why I thought he was MVP. So Rookie of the Year.
That's true. Yeah.
Too difficult. But between him and Awakening, I think the argument can be again said. Shotzzy played a more important role on his team than Awakening did. Awakening had a lot more support and guys like Skies who were unreal at the main AR position. Guys like Pharaoh who put so much pressure at SMG. Even Havoc and Frosty weren't slacking. Whereas for Dallas, he had guys like Hugh and Illy who definitely stepped up at times. But more than not, Shotzzy was the one leading the way for Dallas, which you can't say the same for Awakening. While Awakening did make important plays and was definitely an X factor, Shotzzy was the factor on Dallas Empire. Quite frankly, he was their superstar on a team that played very fundamentally well. Clay wasn't always going off. Krim, he was around average. Illy had his time, so did Hugh, but it was always Shotzzy. It was always going to be Shotzzy if that team was going to pop off. And for Florida, you could say a couple of players, and I think that's why I'd give it a Shotzzy. I'm giving him MVP, so I might as well give him Rookie of the Year as well.
Yeah, that's fair. It's weird because Illy's playing with Shotzzy, and I feel like there's some expectation for Illy to be, one of the Rookies of the Year. So I think I just want to talk about Illy for a second, because I think in terms of being like a cerebral, smart player, as a rookie, I think he's been pretty special. I don't think you usually see rookies coming in and playing as smart as he does. And if you want to see that, just go watch some of their Dom maps and you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, between these two, I kind of agree with you. I think, Awakening's had a crazy impact. And I like it because it came out of nowhere and we expected it more from Shotzzy. But just because we expected it doesn't mean it should be diminished. So I do agree that, Shotzzy is the Rookie of the Year. So, good on him. And I'm excited to see where these guys' careers go in the future, because it's weird because sometimes you have a guy like Kenny who comes in as a rookie, and he wasn't really a rookie of War 2, but he was kind of a rookie, and he came in and just took the lead by storm, and then hasn't really gotten back to that peak. Whereas then you saw a guy like Simp come in, Rookie of the Year, and he's been able to keep it up. So I hope these guys keep it up going in the future and can show it on LAN, because I really want them to prove the haters wrong, because I think these guys are special talents. But that said, we're going to move to our final little section here. We're going to get into our picks for Team of the Season. So yeah, why don't you give your Team of the Season first?
Yeah, so my Team of the Season, as you can see on the screen, I went with Octane, Celium, Pharaoh, Abizi, and Shotzzy. In my decision making, when it came, I looked at the subs first, and I think obviously I already have Shotzzy as my MVP and Rookie of the Year, so I was definitely going to have him on my Team of the Year. I think he's been dynamic for Dallas. And I think on a team like the one that I listed, he'd be even better. I picked Abizi because I think he's underrated by some in this community. The role he plays is not very easy. He's often going in first for guys like Simp. He was incredible last year, and he looks just as good this year. The plays he makes in S&D, he's often very aggressive on the map, and he's either getting first bloods which can be very key for a team like Atlanta that's regarded as the best S&D team. So I feel like him and Shotzi in a combination would do very well. And when it came to the third sub, Pharaoh was the guy that I thought of instantly. I think, again, he puts up so much pressure on the map, and I feel like if he's running alongside of Beast and Shotzi, he'll just fit in perfectly. And I just think those three as a unit are something that would be feared by the entire league. When it came down to flex position, the only person I could think of is Celium. He played that role so well, and is definitely one of the MVP candidates, as we mentioned by Seth. And when it came to mini R, I had a couple ideas, maybe Skies, but I think when it came down to it, Octane, Sky deserves a good team to play with, and I think a team like this, he'd do extremely well. I mean, he had a great season. It doesn't really show given the fact that the team he's on. But if anyone's watched him, he's doing so much as a main AR that I think he deserves to be a part of the team this season.
Yeah, this is a good team looking at it like role wise, and I feel like they can play well together. I feel like you have Sam, the general, kind of IGLing in the hard points and doms, and then you can have Celium and S&D. Yeah, this looks like a complete team. So definitely a strong team, but I went a slightly different route. I have repeats with Shotzi and Celium. Again, those are MVP picks. I think it's kind of hard to leave them out of a team of the season, given how well they played. And I know you gave him Beezy there because he does get overshadowed a lot, and he is very talented. But I'm gonna put Simp back up there because of the way he ran the M4 this year. I feel like if you put Simp on any team and in any role, he's that gifted that he'll do well. And I think that I went with a little bit of slightly of a different route where I feel like these 5 players, well, actually, I guess not including Skies, but these 4 guys, one of them could flex, and no matter which one could run the flex, they'll still be incredibly gifted and incredibly good because of how good they've been this year in terms of skill-wise. Like, regardless of what gun you put in their hands, it's going to be good. And I actually put Attach there as well because he's quietly had an incredible season this year. We talked about it a bit in our last podcast where we interviewed Carson of COD League Stats, and he said that Attach was the guy that he thought kept surprising him in the stats, kept placing top 5 in a lot of his high ranking stats, and he was saying how underappreciated he was. And when it did win their home event, Attach went off and it went crazy. He's been doing it consistently though, all year. So I think he'll slot in well to a lot of different teams. And as AR, I know Octane's been crazy this year and, hasn't really had the success. But I'm going to give it to Skies on the basis that he isn't the most flashy AR, which means he's incredibly consistent and he's a high KD because he kind of just holds lanes, sits back, and plays really slow. And some people that kind of diminishes his chances of winning an MVP or his chances of having an award because he has an easy role, but because he's played that quote unquote easy role so darn consistently all year, I feel like he's got to be in my team in the season. If I want to have an AR on my team, I want to pick Skies because I know we're going to get game in and game out with him. And it kind of goes the same with all those guys. These guys have been incredibly consistent all year. Actually, Shots had a bit of a slow start, but they've been pretty much consistent all year, and I feel like this team would be pretty scary to play against. Also, they're all pretty short, so Tiny Terrors unite. With our team of the season picks out of the way, I think we're going to get a little bit of a wrap up on the podcast. And to wrap it up, we're going to talk about the format this year and what we liked, what we didn't like. So I'll start it off. Personally, I thought that I want to talk about the AM scene a little bit because there's a lot of complaints and disagreements. But where I see the AM scene, I like the fact that they can play for dedicated prize pools because in the past we've seen AM scenes make pool play and then not place top 8, so place out of the money, and it kind of felt like it was for nothing. I know they get recognition, but they didn't ever win any money from it. It just felt kind of bad. Whereas now they could play for a prize pool, and people were worrying that if they didn't get the competition against the pros, they wouldn't get noticed. But we saw the opposite this year. I feel like we saw a lot of rookies make it into the pro league because of how well they've looked in the CDC, in the challenger scene. So I actually think that this year was good for the amateur scene. Obviously, it would have been a lot different had it been on LAN. I don't really know how it would have looked for the European and APAC scene if it had been on LAN, because I think they would have had less tournaments. But maybe the way they kind of formatted it online, with each scene gets their own tournament and it's all streamed. The CDC Cups were streamed. I actually think they did a really good job with the MC format. But yes, what do you make of the Pro League format this year?
I'll give the CDL credit for changing last minute their format, because from what I remember, it was going to be all league matches, and that ended up changing to the format we have today, where we have these mini events where we have 8 teams at every event, and it's kind of like a GSL type format. Top 2 make it out. I'd like them to change it. Obviously, what we've seen in Call of Duty in the past, I think Black Ops 4 season did a very good job. I mean, having every team at every event is something that I think is necessary, especially
That has to happen.
if you want,
Yep.
Players to consider these tournaments championships. You want everyone to be there. I think it brings more excitement. I think whether you need to expand to 16 teams or just figure out a way to have every team there, it needs to be done. I think it's absolutely necessary if you want events to be more entertaining, in particular. As well, I think with champs, I do like the best of 9 grand final. I initially was against it, but I can see the value in having such a grand final. I'm not too hot on the fact that the top 2 seeds get sort of almost they need to win 2 matches to win champs. Granted, I'm kind of conflicted because at least it makes the regular season more important. But champs, like what champs is, it hasn't been in the past. I mean, having the AM teams there, or having teams that qualify to get into the champs, having pool play, having those upsets, that's what makes champs. It's crazy. It's unexpected. We see great losers bracket runs. We see great upsets. We see every team in that crazy event setting. Obviously, with it being online, it's not going to be as entertaining. But not having that this year, even that format, I understand they want to make regular season more important, and that's what this does. But it takes away from all the craziness of what champs is, and that's something that I really enjoy. So I hope that's something they can somewhat implement next year.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I will say though is I feel like this year at the end of the year, we're gonna know who the best team was. And I feel like that's because of the format. Like I think, the first thing I think of is World War II champs, where EG had a easier side of the bracket and then game plan against TK and beat them on their own maps. TK kind of got stuck in their map pool. And I don't think anybody would agree that they were the best team that year, or maybe even at the event. I think I personally think TK was the better team. It just came down to maps, and what I mean by that is just like more skilled, But I think this format lends itself to the best possible team winning, because I think no matter what side of the bracket you come on, you're gonna play really good competition. So so if you're FaZe or Empire, yeah, you have a couple of buys, but whoever you play is going to be coming off of a hot streak of winning, and it could upset you, and they're going to be good teams. Like I don't think you're going to see a weak side of the bracket. I think every side of the bracket is going to be really tough, and it's because of the way like we mentioned, like the whole season led into this, and so that's kind of why I like it. You don't have an easy AM team to beat to get you up another round, to get you to place in higher in the earnings, and I think like Yas said, the best of 9 is a great format, because at the end of everything, when we have the top team, whether it's Dallas, Atlanta, Huntsman, whoever it is, I think to me they'd be the undisputed best team of the year, because if it's one of those top 3, because they show consistency and then they come up and they beat all the best teams to make it to the championship and win it. So to me, that's kind of why I like the format. I feel like the best team will win, and it won't be because of easy side of the bracket or because of being able to play teams on certain maps with the best of 9 format. But that's kind of my thoughts on the format. But we're going to be kind of breaking down our predictions in the next podcast. We just wanted to do an overview of what we thought for award-wise this podcast. So stay tuned, because it's going to be a tough time to predict the matchups. But is there anything else you want to add, Yas?
No, I think we summed it up very well. This season was crazy, wacky, unexpected. Obviously, hopefully we'll get a better game for next year. At least we can say that. We won't get fined. nice.
I mean, I already installed the game. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a better game. Hopefully we'll get more teams and every team at every event and get more of an event format. Because honestly, I think that if they do it right, they can make Call of Duty one of the most entertaining esports out there. So that's all I have to say.
I think, there's a huge opportunity for COD esports, and I think that's why teams are still considering buying in. You know, the rumors aren't super concrete, but there are rumors of teams looking and interested in joining the league. And it's because there is a huge opportunity. You know, there's clearly a lot of fans that are want to watch, and it's one of the most played games in the world, to be honest. So yeah, definitely a lot of opportunity for the league to get better, and I hope they do it. And I hope a lot of it comes on the backs of competitive integrity. I think we'll talk about more of that at a podcast later when we kind of sum up the whole year. We can maybe do a specific podcast on competitive integrity because there's a lot to talk about there. But just going into champs, I just hope that can get ironed out. I hope there's no issues with that because it's been such a wacky year. I just want there to be a good champs without any issues. It'd be nice. So we'll see. But yeah, that's all for us. So thanks, guys, for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.